Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. But first, thank you for subscribing to the channel and for all those likes. Today we have 3 great stories, so let's get right into them. Shall we? The first story is called Keep It To Yourself. I started as a nurse a few years ago. After being oriented in the emergency room, I got a position on a cardio unit in the same hospital. The manager on this particular unit was one mean old nurse pretty much everyone hated, except a select few on the day shift. I was night shift. When I started studying as a nurse, I had the chance to meet and spend a day with a primary care nurse practitioner. She inspired me to become one as well. So very early on in my training, I knew that's what I wanted to be. I worked hard to have good grades in class. And even outside my classes, I was reading on the Merck manual, learning with osmosis and reading scientific articles to increase my knowledge faster. One night, my colleague is checking up a patient's file and asks out loud why the cardiologist prescribed a certain medicine for this patient. I knew the answer, so I informed her. She looked at me for a few seconds and said okay. On the morning of the next day, my boss calls me in her office and sits me down. She said she received a complaint that I was speaking out of turn at the station. And she agreed that I was too inexperienced to offer advice, counsel or information to nurses with more experience. She said I should keep my comments to myself until my place is secured in the team. Now, keep in mind, I didn't intrude on a conversation or read over her shoulder. She asked a question out loud and I thought I was helping her by answering. What I told her was right. The following nights I didn't peep a word, nor any other night. Anytime my colleagues had a theoretical question or wanted something aloud, I stayed quiet and kept my head in my files. If they needed physical help, I'd give it without a word. Once they even mentioned how quiet I was, and I told them I was told not to offer my opinion at the station, and it cast a chill, but they didn't push anymore. After a few months I left that unit to go back to the emergency room, where I was truly appreciated and felt a part of the team. I am now in an NP program. The next story is called Every 24 Hours. Like many other companies, our leadership recently released news of upcoming changes that, even though profits for our company are up, they are eliminating most of the remaining perks that are still standing. Companies supplied phones for anyone except the tops of the departments, gone. Reimbursements for things like safety shoes, eyeglasses for those of us in metals and fabrication areas, gone. All 401k matches, merit increases and/or bonuses, frozen, until figures reflect pre-2020 levels, i.e. much larger profit margins, even though the workload has increased. Our direct area has had a few manpower losses due to a few folks deciding to retire, and a few that decided to pursue work from home opportunities. And there was a hiring freeze in place instead of replacing anyone. All of this while the majority of the higher-ups and anyone who works with a computer and argued they can work from home are, working from home. This, in our eyes, is essentially a substantial raise for those lucky individuals that can work from home, fuel, daycare, etc. With the cases on the rise again, they decided to implement a health and wellness screening that must be completed every shift within 24 hours to the start of that shift and presented at the security checkpoint. There's even a nice link to where you can complete it on your phone via an app for our convenience. Already annoyed at the above mentioned cuts, and now they are wanting me to use my personal phone and data to complete a survey before working hours, I read the requirements again. It just had to be within 24 hours to the start of the shift and presented at the security checkpoint. We were working on average between 12 and 14-hour days, so I was easily able to complete and print a physical copy of the survey at the end of the day for the following day's requirement. That next day I showed up to security and gave them the paper. The security guard just kind of looked at it and asked what it was. I told her it was the wellness screening so I can enter the building for my shift. She replied, "Oh, well, it has to be done before your shift. This has yesterday's date on it." I pointed at the disclaimer that said it just had to be within 24 hours to the start of the shift, which it was. This, to her defense, is kind of silly, because a lot can happen between the day prior and the start of the new shift. Looking slightly annoyed, she said, "Oh, okay. You can just use your phone going forward, so you don't have to print it out." I thanked her and said it was actually easier for me to just do it at the end of my shift, so I didn't have to think about it in the morning. Especially since I didn't have access to the Wi-Fi until I was already past the security checkpoint. The third morning I did the same thing. She rolled her eyes and put the paper to the side. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was informed afterward that if we didn't use the app version, it didn't have a digital record. So they had to save all physical papers in a folder and retain them in their office. The fourth morning, the head of security was at the door, and as soon as I showed the paper, he asked why I was choosing to do the physical paper instead of the app. I didn't want to go too in-depth, but told him it was easier for me to print it out at the end of the prior workday. And these guys do not pay my phone bill, so I was not going to use my personal phone and data to do a redundant survey of the clock every morning. He tried to argue the paper option was really only for the plants and not for the offices, and I was the only person printing them out in lieu of using the app. I told him I did not see where it said plant use only on the form, and if that was the case, HR would need to update the verbiage. A couple of co-workers in the area caught part of the interaction and how the guy was complaining to my boss as soon as he hit the door about 10 minutes later. I filled them in on what I was doing, and they decided to follow suit. All 15 of us completed the survey at the end of the day to bring in the following morning. Friday morning arrives. I'm sitting in my car watching as a line forms, and everyone has a paper in their hand. I can make out the security guard's face. She looks very unhappy. I finally get out and go to walk in with a big grin on my face and say good morning. She doesn't say a word, just does the temperature check and snatches the paper out of my hand. Around the first break, I see our HR rep walk into the shop and talk to my boss. He looks over at me and points in my direction. Oh boy. She walks over and introduces herself. We'll call her HRQB because she looks like she can play for a minor league. Good morning, I'm from Human Resources. We received a call from the head of security, and they are saying you are giving them printouts of the new health surveys. Do you need help with setting up the app? Oh no, that's not necessary. I actually already told him it's easier for me to do it at the end of my shift the day prior instead of doing it on my personal phone in the morning. I don't get very good reception here until I am on the Wi-Fi, and that's past security. Well, you don't need to be on the Wi-Fi here to complete the survey on the app. You can even do it at home before leaving for work and take a screenshot of the confirmation. That way you won't have to waste paper, and the security team at the door won't have to keep it in a folder and drop it off at the office every day. It will save a lot of time and energy. Well, unfortunately the company has taken away all of the company issued phones except for select individuals, and I'm not going to do the survey on my personal phone or during non-work hours. I agreed that doing the survey every single morning is a bit redundant and wasteful, but it isn't my paper, and the proof is required for me to enter the building. While it is tedious, I am pretty sure that security is on the phone for 7 out of the 8 hours that they are stationed at the door. I think they can take 2 minutes to walk down the hall to drop off the papers at the office. Pretty sure I could have poked the vein on the side of her head and caused a stroke. I thanked her for her time, and my team lead came to pull me to help him with her job and save me. The first few days of the following week, most of my co-workers kept printing out the physical copies, which I thought was hilarious, but it was pretty short-lived. HRQB must have worked harder than she's ever worked in her life, because wouldn't you know it, come that following week an email came out with a link to a new survey that only had to be completed one time. If after that at any point you had flu-like symptoms, tested positive, or were near anyone that tested positive, they held you to the honor system to report it to supervision or HR. The last story is called Bus Driver vs. Karen. I live in Istanbul. We Turks are known for our bad city planning, but Istanbul is extra and famous for it. It's regular for us natives of the city to endure complaints about how bad the traffic is, how awfully structured the roads are, and how long it takes to get to literally anywhere from our friends who came from other parts of Anatolia to work or study here. If you have a car, it is legit normal to have a 2-hour commute home at the very least during rush hour. At my work, they provide a service bus because our building is in the outskirts of the town where they haven't connected a lot of public transportation means yet. People who live close by take the same service bus, so the bus is pretty crowded. About 20 people who all live in close by towns to each other. So a Karen joined our bus the other day. She lived in Taksim apparently, which is a very famous town and is literally connected to every bus, minibus and subway imaginable. She is the only one out of 20 people who lives there. The bus driver asks her if he can drop her off at a public transportation station that connects to Taksim, which would literally be any station in the entire city. She refuses and also complained about the bus driver all the way to the higher ups of the company. And the bus driver gets scolded and disciplined and was told to drop her off at the exact location she wanted to be dropped off at. Cue malicious compliance. The next day, the bus driver replans the route, keeping Taksim in mind. She is right about in the middle of the drop-off order. And, I kid you not, it legit takes just an extra 2 hours in traffic to just reach Taksim. This is without including dropping off other people or reaching the city center. And of course, once you set the route as it is, since it's impossible to get out of traffic, she can't tell the bus driver she changed her mind and to go somewhere else. She can't get off the bus. She has to wait with everyone else, or she might get lynched at work the next day if she hops off at this point. Tired workers are even more tired now, and also mad because they didn't want to suffer more than they already had to in the traffic. The bus driver insists on dropping her off right in front of her doorstep. She finally gets off the bus, and everyone is giving her a stink eye, because where she did get off, the rest are gonna have to wait in more traffic to get out of Taksim now. All in all, she wasted at least 3 hours of everyone's time, including hers, probably more out of the people who were going to be dropped off after her. She now asked to be dropped off at a minibus station at somebody else's drop-off stop and never complained about it ever again too. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.